Hello everyone, welcome back to the Tent of Abraham. I'm Tamir Kreisman from Israel, and this is Parashat Emor. Say it, Leviticus 21 to 25. And this one is called, The Time Has Come. So we've learned so many times that context is key. You can't just take a verse out of context, or let alone a word, and just copy and paste it, and then expect anyone to take you seriously. It doesn't hold up in court. These things should not hold up in anything else in the world. We can all agree on this. However, at least 2.2 billion individuals choose to ignore this fact when it comes to religious agenda. Now, as we've seen here many times, so in other words, here you have agenda going against your own logic. You're doing this to yourself. So there are many ways to look at the same thing, as we can see in the Parashat in the Torah, be it a concept, a sentence, or a word. The Hebrew is so complex, as you've been learning, that every word can have several, even dozens of other words within it, giving us hundreds, if not thousands, of possible outcomes once you put it together within, sentences. So how do we know exactly what's what? Where did the formula come from? I mean, there is basic Hebrew understanding, but I'm talking about the reading and understanding of these secrets that are hidden in plain sight. How do we know to take this out, to look at only this part and not that part, and so on and so forth? The nations, as we see, the nations have the Torah. The Bible is out there in the world. Anyone could get their hand on a Bible, even if they're reading, regardless of what language they read it in, even if they read it in the Hebrew. But the nations do have the Torah, but they clearly can't understand what they're reading. Which is why you can see so many different variations of the Bible. How many different, there are, I think, 150,000 different variations of the Bible, just like there are over 42,000 Christian denominations. Everyone thinks that their thing is right. Everyone thinks that everybody else is going to hell. It's funny. Like I said, when it comes to Judaism, though, it doesn't matter if you're Ashkenaz or if you're Sfarad or if you're from Morocco or if you're from Syria. It doesn't matter. Everything is the same. That's why any Orthodox Jew, regardless of where they come from, can daven, can pray together in anyone else's synagogue, because everything is the same. They have their little tunes differently from their places of origin, but that's it. Now when it comes to this, that's why it's like, okay, who are you comfortable with? Oh, I like the New King James. Great. Oh, I like the New International Version. Great. But it's not the same as the original anyway. So, we have the different sects, we have the different factions and whatnot. So please remember, this is for you. Regardless of what you're reading, you always must test it. This is for you, so you know what's true, right? And I'm like, oh yeah, this is what my Bible says. But your Bible is a translation of 1,000 other translations. Always check the point of origin. There are ways to do this. Still Google is helpful in that. Anyway, your point of origin is always and only the first 5 books of Moses. This is where everything came from. And then you have the Nevi'im, and then you have the Tuvim, making up the Tanakh, or the Torah. Now, in order to understand what is even going on over there, we need our sages. Our sages are the ones who have been given this information, in other words, exactly how to look at what, where, and how, the oral law, which had been passed down from generation to generation, beginning with Moses on Mount Sinai. We know that they didn't make this stuff up, because every single point that they bring, they state where it comes from, which is all Torah sources, and then they put it together, and then even when I explain it to you, you're like, whoa, that does make logical sense to me. They're like, oh, because this is how it is. They explain where it comes from. Okay, so that's very important. So when we look at our Parsha, why am I giving you this whole thing? When our Parsha, specifically the first verse, if you read it on its own, you're like, okay, it is what it is. But look what our sages bring. The last 2 verses of the last Parsha, chapter 20, verses 26 and 27 of Kedoshim. So let's start with verse 26. And you shall be holy to me, for I am the Lord. For I, the Lord, am holy, and I have distinguished you from the peoples to be mine. So this is also a basic formula as to how God concludes all the do's and don'ts when it comes to holiness in the book of Leviticus, right? He says, you shall eat this, you shall not eat that, you shall do this and that, because I, the Lord your God, am holy, right? Or you shall listen to my decrees and commands, because I, the Lord, have taken you out of Egypt, right? This is the conclusion. And yet it's not the last verse in the parsha or the chapter. Then we have verse 27 of chapter 20. So, verse 27 says, a man or a woman who has the sorcery of, it's also necromancy, of or yedoni, shall surely be put to death. They shall pelt them with stones. Their blood is upon themselves. Ve'ish o isha, ki hiye bahem ov or yedoni, mot yamutu, mot, dead, yamutu, will die, be'even, rock, irgemu, thrown, pelted, otam, them, demehem, their blood, dam, blood, demehem, bam, it's on them. So this verse is speaking of all of Israel in general, but also it's a specific prophecy regarding King Saul. Later on, we'll see if we know the story. Actually, we'll see right now. 1 Samuel 28. And Saul inquired of the Lord, and the Lord did not answer, neither by dreams, nor by Urim, nor by the prophets. Okay, so kings dream dreams. Depending how high you are, you dream dreams. Okay, and back then, they were more clear than they were today. The Urim and the Tumim is these two stones that the Leviim and the Kohanim had. Basically, we could see it in the 5 books of Moses, and it basically God says what to go where. If you have a question, do we do this? Do we do that? What do the Urim and the Tumim said? Nor by the prophets, because Samuel was already gone, right? He died, and he said, you're cut off, man. You completely disobeyed God. You were being disobedient to God. God does not want your sacrifices, right? He wanted obedience. In that case, we discussed this. And Saul said to his servants, seek for me a necromanceress, and I shall go to her and inquire of her. And his servant said, behold, there is a necromanceress in En-do. And Saul disguised himself and donned other garments. He took off his kingly garments and he, dressed like a common folk. And he went, and the 2 men went with him. And they came to the woman by night. And he said, divine now for me with necromancy, and conjure up for me whom I shall tell you. Again, this is a woman in the kingdom of Saul. Now we just read that, you got to kill these people by stoning them in the 5 books of Moses. Saul, as king, should have enacted this, right? This is a law. And the woman said to him, behold, you know what Saul has done, that he has abolished the necromancers, but not all of them. She didn't know it was Saul. And those who divine by the Jidoah bone from the land. The whole bone thing? Right, okay. And why do you lay and snare for my life to cause me to die? And Saul swore to her by the Lord, look what he's doing, saying, as the Lord lives, no punishment will happen to you for this thing. You shouldn't have done that. But now, if we read the last verse of last week's Parsha in context, together with the first verse of this week's Parsha, we get a much better understanding. So check this out. I'm going to read 27 of last week and 1 of this week. And a man or woman who has the sorcery of or yedoni shall surely be put to death. They shall pelt them with stones. Their blood is upon themselves. And then the Lord said to Moses, speak to the Kohanim, the sons of Aaron, and say to them, let none of you defile himself for a dead person among his people. There are many different ways to read this, but once you connect these two, we're talking on a spiritual level here, as well as a physical. So, when we know what we're looking for and how to look at it, we get a whole new understanding. So the dead does not only mean those who actually died, but rather raising the spirits from the dead. Necromancers are quite literally the opposite of the Kohanim. These are priests of the underworld. These are priests of God, right? Because what God tells Moses to teach the Kohanim are things that Israel will have to hold by as well. So think about it like this. The holiness that flows from God to Moses, he then passes to Aaron and then to his sons, like the champagne tower, right? who will then pass it to the Levites, who will then pass it on to all of Israel. But the Kohanim are the teachers, the Levites are the assistant teachers, if you will. They basically explain, and we see this from the book of Nehemiah chapter 7, where it says when Ezra was reading the book of the law, and it said that the Levites and 13 other particular men were walking around amongst the people, explaining to them what he read in the written law. In other words, they were saying the oral law. This is very clearly right there in Nehemiah chapter 7. Check it out. Or is it 7, 8, or 8, 7? 7 or 8, I'm sorry. Can't remember right now, but we can discuss this. So it's not just the Kohanim should not mingle with the dead in a physical sense. It's that all of Israel should not mingle with the dead in the spiritual sense. And this is also why it specifically says the Kohanim, the sons of Aaron. This was to establish this exact hierarchy when it comes to the Kedusha, the holiness, Kedoshim. This is why it is only the Kohanim who are permitted to bless the people. The only other place that anyone is ever permitted to use the Kohanim's blessing is when it's directly father to son. And Friday night, okay, the father comes and blesses the son, the Kohanim blessing, okay? And on Erev Yom Kippur, this is a tradition. But, I see a lot of your leader people throwing up their hands like Moses and blessing the congregations with these words. Who are you to bless the congregation? This is reserved the right for the Kohanim, and only in the land of Israel, mind you. Kohanim only do the Kohanim blessings in synagogues outside of Israel, only on high holidays. Yeah, you got to educate yourself on these things, because then that's just disobedience. You see, it's wonderful. Your heart is in the right place. Nevertheless, that's an improper use of God's blessings. Man, if I could even just assist in undoing one of these knots that you got tangled up in, then it's a good day for me. So in regards to the sons of Aaron, Rabbi Shimon brings forth Psalms 31:20. How great is your goodness that you have laid away for those who fear you, that you have worked for those who take refuge in you, in the presence of the sons of men. What did we learn in last week's teaching in regards to fearing God? If you fear the Lord, means you fear His word, means you are obedient to His word, for the Lord and His word are one. Right, we know this. And the way, and the way that we are called to be one and join with the Holy One, we must be obedient to His word. Oh, how superior and precious is that lofty light that is called good. And God saw the light that it was good, and God separated between the light and between the darkness. This is the treasured light with which the Holy One, blessed be He, does good in the world. He does not withhold it any day, and the world is supported and maintained by it. But we can't see it, though. We have to merit seeing it, and that's only once we're done here. That you have laid away for those who fear you. For we have learned that God made a lofty light when He created the world, and treasured it for the righteous, for the future to come. We had many classes on this. Now, the next part of the verse says, you have worked for those who take refuge in you. When the world was created, this light was shining from the beginning to the end, meaning it was already here. But when God saw that there would be wicked that would live in the world, He concealed that light. And this is the meaning of the verse in Job 38:15, where it says, and their light shall be withheld from the wicked. Vayimana mirashaim oram. Every person can merit light, but if you are wicked, it's hidden from you. Not only in this world, but also in the world to come. But He will shine it upon the righteous in the world to come. Now, how great is your goodness that you have laid away for those who fear you, that you have worked for those who take refuge in you, in the presence of the sons of men. The word worked for you, acted, pa'alta, right? Kama rav tuvcha, ma rav tuvcha asher tzafanta, that you hid, li'iracha pa'alta, lif'ol peula. Peula is an action word, it's doing. Doing what? concealed this God concealed this light. For who? For the righteous who conceal themselves in God. Who are the ones that are called to channel this concealed light? The sons of Aaron. Remember Nadav and Avihu as well. This is what we discussed last week. It was actually not necessarily a bad thing that they were not mentioned by name, but rather called the sons of Aaron because they are still part of this. This is why they fall in this category of the righteous. And who are the sons of Aaron? The Kohanim. They channel through their blessing the light onto the people from God. And what is their purpose? To purify us. And why are they to purify us? So that God may sanctify us, i.e. make us holy, kadoshim, kadosh. And what happens when one becomes sanctified? Exodus 19. And now if you obey me and keep my covenant, you shall be to me a treasure out of all the peoples, for mine is the entire earth. Here's your separation. And you shall be to me a kingdom of priests, and a holy nation. Vatem tiyu li mamlechet kohanim, priests, vegoy kadosh kedoshim. Ele hadvarim asher tedaber el bnei Israel. These are the words that you shall speak to the children of Israel. Meaning, everyone. The priests are teaching people how to be like them. You understand? This is their job now. Later on, we're all there. Everybody's going up a level. Have you ever heard of painting a target? It's a military term, right? You could see in a lot of these special forces movies or whatnot, right? So you have ground forces, usually the special forces, and they paint a target with a laser. So this enables the fighter jets to drop bombs or missiles, you know, if a target, let's say, is camouflaged, right? And you can't see it from the air. So you have ground forces, the special forces, they sneak behind enemy lines, they see the target, and they paint the target with the laser. Now, so it can only be picked up by the special equipment, okay? And it locks on, and it drops the bomb or the missile, and you have a direct hit. Sometimes they do tactical nukes this way as well. Anyway, the Kohanim are the spiritual special forces that have been given the coordinates as the voice over the radio. All right, here's your target. That's God through Moses, tells them exactly which target to paint. That's Israel. Israel's a target to paint. Okay, boom, there, right there. So that the good light of creation might be directed through them at God's people. And now, speaking of bright lights and unholy ghosts, I'll share some info regarding what a man sees and what happens when he dies. Now, I know what I said 2 weeks ago in this regard. In fact, I just copied and pasted my quote so we're clear. I said, but if you will notice, Jews don't do that, meaning we don't dwell on the things to come, what happens after and this and that. Sure, we discuss all things. After all, we have been given the info, as I'm about to share some with you. But that is not, nor was it ever our main focus. What comes next? Who cares? What happens now is what we concern ourselves with. Because if you don't do what you're supposed to do here, then what comes next is not even relevant to you. Maybe this will help. Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful with a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. And quote. So that's what I said in that context in this regard. So why am I about to mention what comes next briefly here now? Because now it is relevant to the verse that we are learning in the Torah. So the only thing that I'm dwelling on is Torah, and the topic is appropriately timed. Come and see. When a man is about to go to that world and is on his deathbed, 3 messengers come to him. He sees there what one cannot see in this world. Often you see testimonies, they're like, oh, I see, a deceased person or other people over there in the room, but the living people can't see it. This is on his way out, right? That is also known as Judgment Day, right? Like a thief in the night. It's not necessarily the end of the world, it's when you die. And you don't know when that's going to be. That's why you always got to be walking in uprightness. So this judgment day, this is when the king asks for his deposit back. What is his deposit? And we know what his deposit is. Happy is the man who returns the deposit to the king as it was given him, meaning perfect. If that deposit was soiled with bodily filth, what shall he say to the owner of the deposit? He lifts up his eyes and sees the angel of death standing before him with his sword drawn in his hand, the destroying angel in charge of breaking that man. One thing I want to say, if you have seen the teaching on the death of Moses, Parashat Emor, watch it, okay? Love the topic matter. This is basically the last hour of Moses' death and what he saw and what he went through and what his neshama said, okay? Listen to that teaching. It's very, very cool, and you might get a better understanding. Nothing is harder for the nefesh to separate from the body. Okay, so what is a nefesh? The nefesh is the life source that animates your body, that connects it to the ruach, that connects it to the neshama. Okay, so you have the guf, and then in the guf there's the nefesh. It's the blood, right? That's what it is. It animates you. It gives you your spiritual juices here. And then you have the ruach that can go to the good inclination or the evil inclination, and then you have the neshama, which is with God. So that's the hierarchy of this. So nothing is harder for the nefesh to separate from the body, because the nefesh is more so connected to the physical, because it's literally in the physical rather than in the spiritual. But that man does not die until he sees the Shekhinah, the glory of God. Right? You cannot see my glory and live, because you can't. It's not like, sorry, not for you. If you're alive, you can't do this. It's spiritual and physical. You can't mix the two. Yeah, anyway. Through much yearning for the Shekhinah is when the nefesh leaves the body. That's it. There's that white light, right? And this is in order to welcome the Shekhinah. Now come with me back to earth for a minute. After the nefesh has left the body, and it remains spiritless, without ruach, right? The necromancers, they raise the spirits of the dead. It is forbidden to leave it unburied. This is a big no-no, and this is a direct command. We can see this in Deuteronomy 21. If a man commits a sin for which he is sentenced to death, and he is put to death, you shall then hang him on a tree. Whole nother topic. But you shall not leave his body on the tree overnight. Rather, you shall bury him on that same day. For a hanging human corpse is a blasphemy of God, and you shall not defile your land, which the Lord your God is giving you as an inheritance. Even though it says for the land, but yeah, it's still. So if a body is, it's more for the body. So if a body is unburied for 24 hours, meaning a day and a night, it causes the part of the merkava, the chariot, to weaken and detains the actions of the Holy One, blessed be He, from being carried out. That's why God specifically gave these commands to man to do. That's why when you honor the dead, it's something that the dead can never repay you. So when you attend someone's funeral, when you bury somebody, it's a big deal. Right? Because the dead, they can't even say thank you. So you know it's all goodness when you do that. What were we saying? Right, okay. So, for God may have decreed upon him, the person or her, the person who just died, another incarnation at once on the day that they died in order to help them. But as long as the body is not buried, the soul, the neshama, cannot come before God, because they're all connection and they have to be detached in a specific way. Nor can it be in another body, in another incarnation, for a soul is not given to another body before it is buried. Okay, now I'm sure this might be very confusing to many of you coming out of the church and caught up with anything else that is not Judaism right now, but that's okay. You might get this explanation. Another understanding of this other body that is given is a body of light. When the soul leaves the body and wishes to go into that world, in the world to come, it cannot do so without a body of light. Only then can it enter. This is just like the prophet Elijah. He was taken up to the heavens in chariots of fire. We saw this. And when he is detached from the physical realm and enters the spiritual realm in the presence of God, then he must be given a new body. Okay, we've read this. This is the very same thing that happened with Enoch, who was taken up. And who did he become? Enoch became Metatron. Yeah, that guy. And we see him all throughout the Torah because he is also known as Malach Adonai, the angel of the Lord, or rather the messenger of the Lord. That's Enoch, Metatron. Also, we know that he very specifically looks out for Israel. We see where he is all throughout. And we know that so long that Moses was around, Metatron was not even needed because Moses was more than enough. Just to give you an understanding of, yet again, of how high Moses was. Anyway, how do we know all this stuff? Because it has been recorded that Elijah is sometimes here and sometimes there, in the presence of men and in the presence of angels. And the same thing with Enoch, Metatron, the angel of the Lord, who has many names because he has many jobs, right? We read he's there, but he's up there. Oh, but he just, spoke to Abraham, spoke to Isaac, Jacob, and so on and so forth. So, in fact, Metatron, he holds 70 out of the 72 names of God within him. And that's pretty impressive. So as long as the body is not buried, the soul itself suffers. Since the spirit of defilement is in readiness everywhere, you have to keep yourself holy. If you don't keep yourself holy, by default, you will become defiled. The spirit of defilement is in readiness. One must not keep the body for a night, for the spirit of defilement is present at night, and it spreads, or rather it roams, throughout the land seeking for soulless bodies to defile. The whole haunted house thing, for instance. It's not that far off. If bodies were not buried, if the things were not done properly, then where are they? They got nowhere to go. Therefore, again, obviously, don't take the whole Hollywood thing. Just all this stuff is written. Where do you think Hollywood gets all this stuff from? Ein chadash tachat hashemesh, kids. Therefore, at night it is defiled even more. And this is an even deeper look as to why the verse says, "Let none of you defile himself for a dead person among his people, also those who were not buried properly, and their spirit roams. But since they are holy, and the children of Israel are to be holy both in life and in death." Yes, that's possible too. "The spirit of defilement will not dwell upon them, and they shall not be defiled." So, we spoke of the light, we spoke of the night, we spoke of the dead, and we spoke of holiness. Now let's bring them all together. Chapter 23. "And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Speak to the children of Israel and say to them, the Lord's appointed holy days, that you shall designate as holy occasions, these are my appointed holy days. דבר אל בני ישראל ואמרת אליהם מועדי אדוני אשר תקראו אותם, ואמרת אליהם מועדי אדוני אשר תקראו אותם מקראי קודש, אלה הם מועדי. These are my times. Now, yes, the word moed, moadim, means holidays, or rather holy days, but more specifically and literally it means appointed time. Now, these appointed times have been timely appointed a long appointed time ago. There is a verse in Psalms 102:14 that says, You will rise, have mercy on Zion, for there is a time to favor it, for the appointed season has arrived. Ata takum terachem Tzion, ki et lechanena, ki ba moed. This is the yearning that we all strive for God to not only restore that which was lost, but to bring it to its full glory. For instance, do we know what the difference between Zion, Jerusalem, and the land of Israel is? Because, people say it's all the same thing. Is the land of Israel the land of Zion? Is the land of Moriah, Mount Moriah, where the Temple Mount stands, or rather should be, is that Zion? Meaning Jerusalem? We keep reading about the daughters of Zion and the return to Zion, but where is it? What is it? We need to know this stuff. Excuse me, very dusty here today. Zion is not here on earth, but it is the glory of God on high. The heavenly kingdom that is the heavenly Jerusalem that can only be connected to the earthly Jerusalem. There's a heavenly third temple that's just waiting to drop, but we got to get everything here in order. It cannot drop so long as that thing is sitting there right now. This is what Moses was trying to do. He was setting everybody up exactly perfectly to bring down Malchut Shamayim. You got to get ready the kingdom over here so the kingdom over there can slide in perfectly into its place. This is what Moses was doing his entire life. This is what we're called to do right now, but we're all over the place. Anyway, why do you think the United Nations are so against Israel? Let's look at the world today, right? Even the name United Nations is biblical, because they know that if Israel actually have complete control over Jerusalem and the land of Israel, then Israel would become the safest and most glorious country in the world. All the Jews in the world would flock here in droves, and many of the nations would come and ask to join. And oh yeah, all the prophets speak about this as well. I'm not making this stuff up. Read your prophecies, right? When Israel is good, the world is good. When Jerusalem is won and the abomination is off the temple, the world will be great. And when the third temple stands, well, use your imagination. So when we read, Ata takum tirachem Tzion ki et lechenena ki vamoed, and you shall rise and have mercy on Zion, for it is time to favor her. The time has come. This time is almost upon us. Actually, it's already begun. Technically, it's here. Know your times. How? By knowing God's times. So, let's know them. Speak to the children of Israel and say to them, the Lord's appointed holy days, that you shall designate holy occasions. These are my appointed holy days. You're just going to graze through this, or graze. You're going to just read through this, and you're not going to even realize what you just read. But I'm going to help you. So the first time that was appointed for us was that good light that we discussed earlier, right? From the beginning. We know that because it was here before everything was. And as we know that because of the wicked people in the world, that God concealed this light, or as it's written, he separated the light from darkness. But wait, the light he called day and the darkness he called night. But there's something very, very interesting that our sages say. And God said, let there be light, and there was light. Vayomer Elohim yehi or, vayehi or. This language implies that the light was already here even before God said that. And if you think about it, it actually makes sense, because Bereshit bara Elohim et hashamayim ve'et haaretz. At first, God created the heavens and the earth. And there seemed to have been darkness and water at that time as well, before darkness or water was mentioned, right? Now the earth was astonishingly empty, and darkness was on the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the face of the water. And so if there is darkness somewhere, there should be light. So the language of yehi ol, yehi, let there be, and God said, let there be light, and there was light, also coincides with his speech to the water in verse 6. And God said, let there be an expanse in the midst of the water. And let it be a separation between water and water. Where did God make the water? The water was already here when he made the heavens and the earth. Later on, he created the oceans. Because we just read in verse 2 that there was water. But only now God separated it. So when we read things like, let there be, that's God giving permission for it to come forth. That which already was. Which can give us a whole new perspective on things, by the way, if you read it now knowing this. Now, we also learned, I believe, in the last 2 weeks, that the night also refers to Malchut, kingdom, the oral Torah, or the moon, female, also known as the congregation of Israel. There was the darkness and there was the light. What is Bereshit? Bereshit is the first letter, a first word in the Torah. The last word is Israel. Bereshit Israel. First there was Israel with that light, but he had to separate them because wicked people, and then he's going to connect with us in the end. It's genius. While the day refers to Zeir Anpin, the 6 Sfirot, the Torah, or the sun, male. And so given this process, this thought process, do we now understand verse 4 in Genesis 1? And God saw the light that it was good, and God separated between the light and between the darkness. The darkness, my friends, was not bad just because the light was good. He separated the two. We don't have to necessarily think in opposites when it comes to this. Just because something doesn't mesh doesn't mean that it's bad, right? I mean, oil and water. Is water bad? No. Is oil bad? No. But they don't mix. But God had to separate it because not everyone would merit it. But then he chose Israel. Then he chose the night. And when the night turns to day, that's the time when all Israel are made holy, for he is holy. Erev, confusion. Boker, clarity. This is why Erev Rav literally means the night of confusion. The great confusion. Rav is great. Erev, mixed, multitude, right? Confusion, the great confusion. Or Erev, darkness, the great darkness. Okay, and Boker, morning. Levaker, to inspect when it is clear. Jacob, Israel. But while the congregation of Israel are in exile, we are not considered to be one as it is in the heavens. Remember, the Torah was here before the world was, and the written Torah and the oral Torah are one. So still there was a separation between the two because it is up to us to bring it together. Just like God separated man and woman so they can come together, God separated the written and the oral law because they have to merit it. So if you say, oh yeah, I read Bible all day long, but you throw away the oral Torah, I'm not impressed. And I promise you, neither is God. I'm not speaking for him. I am giving you his word. So, what the righteous have been trying to do throughout the generations is to unite the two. Zeir Anpin with Malchut. This is what Moses tried to do. This is what David tried to do his whole life. This is what we're trying to do here today. Now, yes, I know, after 2,000 years, although our physical exile is over, it's still not, right? Okay, fine. So here's the unification. Israel's back in its land, but it's not exactly true. As we discussed, what's going on in Jerusalem and what's going on Temple Mount. But that's not even the worst part of what's going on. The worst part is because the third temple can't come until all of Israel are here, which is what I've been saying. And yeah, that means you guys too. It means you too. I'm not only speaking of Jews who are comfortably sitting in the States or in the UK or France. Like, France? Really? What? Don't worry now. It would seem that, I don't know, God is allowing it to become less and less comfortable nowadays. Not only for Jews, but on a global scale. And now, you have Jews coming to Israel secretly from all over the world, flocking. And there are many that are non-Jews that want to come in right now. The gates are closing. What are you guys waiting for? I'm speaking, though, of our lost brothers, the house of Israel. Your Jew brother is calling you. Don't you want Mashiach to come? Don't you want to see the third temple? Don't you want to return to the land that is rightfully yours and claim what has been given to you by God through your father Jacob? I know you do. And so, you know what you must do. And there is only one way about it. Hear me now. You gotta go through Judah. Like it or not, Judah has the scepter. Which is why, by the way, this is what's keeping you guys out. Bottom line, period. There's nothing else that is keeping you out here other than the fact that you will not recognize Judah, right? I don't know those rabbis. Okay, fine. Stay where you are. No problem. But until you recognize the prophecy of Jacob, to your big brother Judah, you shall remain in exile. And we all suffer as a result. I'm not condemning. I'm trying to open your eyes, right? It's like, wake up. Okay, get with it. Genesis 49. Again, I'm going to read this, but listen. Judah. This is Jacob telling Judah, and said, come, I will tell you what's happening in the end of days. Judah, as for you, your brothers will acknowledge you. Because all those that won't will not be your brothers. Very simple. Okay, right. Your hand will be at the nape of your enemies, and your father's sons will prostrate themselves to you. Okay. Zechariah speaks of this as well in 8:23. So says the Lord of hosts, we know this verse, in those days 10 men of all languages of the nation shall take hold of the skirt of the Jewish man, saying, let us go with you, right? Of a Jew, it specifically says, Ish Yehudi. Ish Yehudi, not Ish Israel, Ish Yehudi, a Jewish man. Back to Genesis. A cub and a grown lion is Judah. From the prey, my son, you withdrew. It's like Simba finding his roar. And he's in exile, but then he's in the land, roar. Simba, right? Okay. From the prey, my son, you withdrew. He crouches, rested like a lion, and like a lion, who will rouse him? Because who's back in Judah? Like, come at me, bro, right? 10. The scepter shall not depart from Judah. No. Nor the student of the law from between his feet until Shiloh comes, and to him will be a gathering of peoples. This last verse only made sense to me about a week ago. Okay? All right. Now, I've been doing a lot of reading, a lot of studying, a lot of stuff. And I've come to discover many new things. And don't worry, I will share it with you at the appointed time. Oh boy, am I going to share it with you. But first of all, do you realize that every day that you disrespect Judah, you are keeping the prophecy from being fulfilled? Who fulfills prophecy? We do. Everything is done through people, if you haven't noticed that, right? Even the stuff that's going around. It's done through people. God uses people to fulfill prophecy. God used Egypt to fulfill prophecy. He used Persia and Babylon and Greece and Rome to fulfill prophecy. Currently, if you say that you love God and Torah and this and that, but you do not recognize the authority of Judah that I read to you right here, you are keeping this prophecy from being fulfilled, or you are just not part of it. It's simple. You can't have it both ways. Does this make? I know this makes sense. It's very simple. Second, why does Jacob mention the student of the law when it was not yet given? Okay? Hebrew says, Lo yasur shevet, okay, the scepter, mi Yehuda, umechokek. Mechokek comes from chok. Chok literally means law. Okay? Just like chukim. What is a chok? What is the chukim in the Torah different from mishpatim and mitzvot and whatnot? Chukim are the laws in the Torah that make no sense to man. But you have to do it on faith. In other words, God said that you cannot mix wool and linen. We don't understand why. Nevertheless, the same God that said this said that, and so we're taking it on faith. But again, a lot of places, anybody, in fact, other than Orthodox Judaism is like, that doesn't make sense to me. I don't do it. I've heard plenty of clowns out there saying you think God really needs you to put the skin of a dead animal on your head and on your arm? Like, yeah, because it says so in the 5 books of Moses. So, I disagree. Anyway. Okay, so he mentions the student of the law, but the law was not given yet. Nevertheless, end of days, right? And third, who is Shiloh who will gather the peoples? Right? Now, will the peoples be gathered to Shiloh, or will the peoples be gathered to Judah? Because that's unclear. So, I'll tell you what. If you think you figured this out, send me an email, but tell me why. Okay? Don't just throw around names. I want an understanding. And if you're on point, we'll have a discussion. Otherwise, I'm just not going to answer. Okay? Anyway, back to the light and your jobs, people. Without everyone here, we are not called one. Okay, again, I'm not pointing fingers. I'm doing the same thing like this for Judah. We got problems too. We got internal problems to work on. We have to be able to receive you. But again, there's one thing that stands in the way from this happening. If we are not called one, we cannot unite with the one, according to the Word of God. Last week we discussed it on a personal level, and that's fantastic, how one becomes one. Man and wife, they're called one, uniting with the one. Okay, but now we need everybody doing their part on a national level. In other words, every one must become one, or every two must become one, uniting with the one, and each one will then unite with the one, becoming one. A lot of ones. Because this is the meaning of the verse in Zechariah 14:9. But we're just going to read 2 verses back for context, see how this is relevant to exactly what we're talking about. So we'll start with 14:7. And it shall be one day that shall be known to the Lord, neither day nor night. And it shall come to pass at eventide, it shall be light. And it shall come to pass on that day that spring water shall come forth from Jerusalem, half of it to the eastern sea, and half of it to the western sea. In summer and in winter it shall be, never cease. And the Lord shall become king over all the earth. On that day the Lord shall be one, and his name one. Neither day nor night, at eventide it shall be light. Day and night are not gone. Day and night are one. Because who is day and who is night? But the written Torah and the oral Torah, God and his bride Israel. Do you see this? It's something new. And look, there's the light that we've been waiting for since the beginning of time. At the eventide there shall be light. Not day or night. It's something new. This is a hybrid, if you will. This has never been. Not since before the world was. Chadesh yamenu kekedim. Bring us back. And yep, there it is. The water from the very beginning. The firmament. The one that went up to the heavens with God is going to pour out of Jerusalem. And what did we just say that needs to take place for the blessing to flow from Jerusalem? Jerusalem down here has to align with Zion up there. It comes down from there directly, the pipeline, right down from Zion to Jerusalem, and it pours out. And when this happens, that's when you know that now's the time, right now. And the Lord shall become king over all the earth. When? On what day? On that day shall the Lord be one and his name one. Amen. So, now we read. Speak to the children of Israel and say to them the Lord's appointed times, holy days, that you shall designate as holy occasions. These are my appointed holy days. The Hebrew says, tikra'u. Here's what you missed before in the plain text. Check this out. The Hebrew says, tikre'u. Daber bnei Israel v'amarta elehem, you shall tell them, mo'adei Adonai asher tikre'u. Like Vaikra, and he called tikre'u, you will call. Meaning, what is God saying? You will call them children, you will proclaim them, and you will appoint them. My kids. And what does this mean? It is up to us to summon everything into place. Because the secret of these times are the secret of Chesed, Gvura, and Tiferet. These three are known as the Chariot of God. Where's my thing? Here it is. Okay? Chesed, Gvura, Tiferet, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. This is the Merkava. This is what the whole thing is based on. Right? Now, like I said, there's so many different combinations to look at. But then you even have these three. 1, 2, 3, and it goes all the way down to Malachut. Right? The patriarchs became these, and God rests on the Merkava. Yes, the Chariot of God. These are represented by the patriarchs Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. But wait a minute. They up there. We're down here. How are we getting up there? What are we called to build? The kingdom, right? Remember, we're called to build the kingdom. How do we build this kingdom? By uniting the Zeir Anpin with Malchut, the written Torah with the oral Torah, the day and the night, God and Israel. Do you see? Male and female becoming one. Okay. And when we build the kingdom, which is not only how we live, but now God is saying where we live, this means that we just secured the pipeline, and down comes the blessings. This is the secret of one. As Israel are called one nation under God. Sorry, America, but at least you plagiarized from a good source. I mean, yeah, best possible source. 2 Samuel 7:23. And who is like your people, like Israel? One nation in the world. One nation in the world. At the end, Israel will only be one nation. There will be scattered peoples. Other peoples, one nation. 2 Samuel 7:23. And who is like your people, like Israel, one nation in the world, whom God went to redeem for himself as a people, and to make him a name. You will appoint to make him a name. God makes himself a name. He glorifies himself through Israel. For through Israel I shall be glorified. God doesn't need anybody, but he chooses Israel. You see? Also to accomplish for you the greatness and fearful things for your land in driving out from before your people, whom you did redeem for yourself out of Egypt, the nations and their gods. Have you done your daily shake-up yet? Tick-tock. And where are Israel to gather below in order to cause unity from above? Where, I wonder? Terrestrial Jerusalem. But you could start with the land of Israel, because the heavenly Jerusalem is bigger than all the land of Israel. We're taking up a whole bunch of countries, let me tell you. Meaning, when all of Israel, who are God's, lost tribes included, can't do it without you, gather in Jerusalem below. And how long do we have to get this done? Because ready or not, here God comes. 6,000 years. That's all we've been given. When God reveals all, and nothing more is hidden. Do you really have a clue what time it is today? You better get ready, because it ain't 5780. As written, for 6 days work may be performed, but on the seventh day it is a complete rest day, a holy occasion. You shall not perform any work, It is a Sabbath to the Lord in all your dwelling places. Tick-tock. The time has come. Ki ba'moed. Thank you so much for joining me. Have a wonderful rest of the week, and have a Shabbat Shalom. Bye-bye now.